The syringe trembled in Dr. Kingsley Reed's hand as he stood outside room 347, knowing that what he was about to do could cost him his career, or worse. But the woman lying in that bed, with her warm brown eyes that still managed to smile despite her mysterious illness, had already cost him something far more dangerous: his heart. Inside that syringe was Prussian blue, the only antidote that could save her from the slow poison coursing through her veins. He'd found the plot 3 days ago. Now, at 2 a.m., he was about to commit what would look like the ultimate betrayal of medical ethics: administering an unauthorized drug to a patient without consent. But if he didn't, Amara Williams would be dead within 72 hours. Kingsley closed his eyes, and her face filled his mind, the way she smiled at him, even through pain, the sound of her laughter when he'd made an awkward joke about hospital food, the softness in her voice when she'd said his name. Kingsley, like a prayer, like a promise. He was in love with her. Desperately, irrevocably, impossibly in love with her. And if saving her life meant destroying his own, so be it. Kingsley took a breath, glanced down the hallway one more time, and pushed open the door. He didn't see Devin Williams waiting in the shadows, phone recording, ready to catch him in the act. But we are getting way ahead of ourselves. This story started 3 weeks earlier. But before we continue, an amazing shout out to some of our active subscribers who are always engaging our stories with love. Lisa Friday, who always follow every story on this channel, Sint Perpal from Miami, Florida, and Shola Ajibulu from Nigeria. We really love you, and you are so dear to our hearts. Who knows, you might earn a beautiful shout out in our next story if you actively engage with this one. Now let's go back to our story. Amara Williams had always believed in fairy tales, even as a 32-year-old marketing executive who should have known better. She believed in true love, in happy endings, in the kind of romance that made your soul sing. That's why she'd married Devin 5 years ago. Tall, charming, successful Devin, who'd swept her off her feet with rose petals and moonlit proposals. But fairy tales, she was learning, sometimes had monsters hiding in plain sight. Mrs. Williams? The voice was deep, professional, quietly gentle, like velvet over steel. I'm Dr. Reed. I'll be overseeing your care while Dr. Morrison is away. Amara looked up from her hospital bed, and the world seemed to tilt slightly on its axis. The man in the white coat was beautiful in an understated, almost scholarly way. Striking blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses that somehow made him look both intelligent and vulnerable, dark hair slightly disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it, while lost in thought. He had the look of someone more comfortable with textbooks than people. But there was something in his eyes, a depth, a kindness that took her breath away. Another doctor, she managed to say, her voice coming out softer than intended. Her heart was doing strange things in her chest, fluttering like it had forgotten its purpose. I'm starting to collect you all. Kingsley Reed had seen thousands of patients in his 15 years of practice. He'd maintained perfect professional distance through tears, through gratitude, through every emotion the human condition could produce. He was an introvert by nature, more at home in research labs than at hospital social functions, more comfortable with silence than small talk. But when Amara Williams smiled at him, truly smiled, despite being sick and scared and uncertain, something in his carefully constructed walls didn't just crack, it shattered completely. She was breathtaking. Not just beautiful, though she was that, even pale and exhausted, there was something luminous about her. But it was more than that. It was the warmth in her eyes, the grace in the way she tried to make him feel comfortable, even though she was the one in the hospital bed. It was the way her presence filled the room like sunshine breaking through clouds. Kingsley felt his heart stutter, his carefully rehearsed introduction evaporating from his mind. Well, let's see if we can figure out what's going on and get you out of this collection business, he said softly. Get it together, Reed, he told himself. She's a patient. She's married. This is completely inappropriate. Scent of her perfume, something floral and warm that made him think of spring mornings and new beginnings. He scanned the medications, the test results, the treatment plan, and that's when he saw it. A slight discrepancy. The dosage of her blood pressure medication was unusually high for someone her age and weight. And there was another prescription, an anticoagulant, that seemed unnecessary given her condition. Dr. Morrison prescribed these? He asked, keeping his voice carefully neutral. I think so? Amara's brow furrowed. Everything's been such a blur. My husband Devin usually talks to him. I just want to feel better. Your husband is very involved in your care? He's been wonderful, Amara said, and something in her voice caught a hesitation. A tiny crack in the perfection. He's here every day. He talks to the doctors more than I do. She paused, her fingers twisting the blanket. He keeps asking about my life insurance. Says he's just making sure everything is in order in case. Her voice trailed off and she laughed nervously. I'm probably being paranoid. He's just being prepared. That's what he always says. Be prepared. Red flags began waving in Marcus's mind. Years of experience had taught him to trust his instincts, and his instincts were screaming. About 6 months ago, right after I updated my policy, the payout is substantial. But that's not, he loves me. He's just worried. She said it like she was trying to convince herself. Of course, Marcus said softly, making another note. I'd like to run some additional tests, just to make sure we're not missing anything. Over the next week, Kingsley found himself spending more time in room 347 than any other. He told himself it was due diligence. A patient with an unclear diagnosis required thorough attention. But he knew deep in his bones that he was lying to himself. Every morning he'd stand outside her door for just a moment, gathering courage like a teenage boy about to ask a girl to dance. His heart would race, his palms would sweat, and then he'd push open the door, and she'd look up at him with those warm brown eyes, and the whole world would make sense again. Amara was sunshine in human form. Despite feeling awful, she asked about his day with genuine interest. She laughed at his quiet, dry humor, really laughed, with her whole body, in a way that made him want to spend his life collecting those sounds. She talked about her dreams, wanting to start her own business, maybe write a book, travel to all the places she'd pinned on her vision board, but never seemed to have time for. And Kingsley, who usually struggled with conversation, who preferred the safety of silence, found himself opening up to her in ways he never had with anyone. He told her about his research, his love of classical music, the mystery novels he read to unwind. He told her about growing up shy, about choosing medicine because healing people didn't require being good at parties. He told her things he'd never told anyone. She listened like his words were precious. She remembered details. She asked follow-up questions days later. You mentioned Chopin last week, she said one afternoon, her voice soft. Kingsley's breath caught. No one had ever said anything like that to him before. He adjusted his glasses, a nervous habit, not trusting himself to speak. That was probably weird, Amara said quickly, misreading his silence. I'm sorry, No, Kingsley interrupted, his voice rough with emotion. No, that wasn't weird. That was the most beautiful thing. Their eyes met and the air between them felt charged, electric. Kingsley wanted to reach out, to take her hand, to tell her that every moment he spent with her felt like coming home to a place he'd never been. But she was married, she was his patient, so he just smiled softly and said, I'm glad you enjoyed the music, and tried to ignore the ache in his chest when he walked away. At night, alone in his apartment, Kingsley would stare at the ceiling and let himself imagine. Where he could hold her, kiss her, wake up beside her every morning. You're being ridiculous, he'd tell himself. You barely know her. This is a crush, not love. It will pass. But it didn't pass. It grew stronger every day, every conversation, every smile she gave him. And Kingsley knew, with a certainty that terrified him, that he would never feel this way about anyone else. Amara was his once in a lifetime, and she belonged to someone else. Devin says I should focus on getting better first, she mentioned one afternoon, a shadow passing over her beautiful face. He's probably right. He usually is. What do you say? Asked quietly, and the question felt heavier than it should. Amara looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment the room felt impossibly small. I say I've spent a lot of time listening to what other people think I should do. Their eyes held. He looked away first, adjusting his glasses, a nervous habit. Amara, he said carefully, his voice gentle as always. Is everything okay? At home, I mean? She was quiet for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice was small, vulnerable in a way that made Kingsley want to gather her in his arms and promise her that everything would be all right. Do you ever have this feeling that something's wrong, but you can't put your finger on it? Like you're seeing puzzle pieces that don't quite fit, but you're too afraid to look at the whole picture? Devin's been different lately, more attentive, but in a strange way. He brings me to all my appointments, speaks for me, insists on handling all my medications. He's updated our wills twice in the past 3 months. She laughed, but there was fear in it. And that insurance policy? He brought the agent to the hospital last month, said we needed to increase the death benefit just to be safe. $2 million safe. Her hands trembled, and Kingsley reached out instinctively, covering them with his own. The touch sent electricity through both of them, a jolt of connection so powerful that they both froze. Kingsley should have pulled away, should have maintained professional boundaries. But Amara's hands were cold and shaking, and the thought of letting go felt impossible. What kind of person am I suspecting my own husband? Her voice cracked, tears welling in her eyes. He's been nothing but devoted. He comes every single day. He tells me he loves me. And I... What? Kingsley prompted gently, his thumb unconsciously stroking the back of her hand. I don't feel anything when he says it anymore, Amara whispered, and a tear slid down her cheek. Or if I'm just scared. The words hung in the air between them. Kingsley's heart stopped, then started again, pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. Amara, he breathed, and her name on his lips was a caress, a confession, everything he couldn't say. I'm sorry, she said quickly, trying to pull her hands away. That was inappropriate. You're my doctor, I'm married, I shouldn't have... Amara, Kingsley said again, holding her hands gently but firmly. What does your gut tell you? About Devin. She looked at him for a long moment, and something passed between them. An understanding, a recognition, 1,000 unspoken words. Tears welled in her eyes. That I'm terrified, and I don't know if I'm being crazy, or if... She couldn't finish the sentence. Then the door opened. Devin Williams was exactly what Reed expected. Expensive suit, practiced smile, the kind of handshake that tried too hard to prove dominance. He was handsome in a calculated way, like someone who'd studied what women found attractive and manufactured it. Dr. Reed, is it? Devin said, positioning himself between Kingsley and Amara's bed. His hand rested on Amara's shoulder, possessive. I wanted to discuss my wife's treatment plan. Dr. Morrison and I had a very specific protocol established. Of course, Kingsley said quietly. I actually had some questions about her current medications. Something flickered in Devin's eyes. Dr. Morrison assured me this was the best course of treatment. I'm sure he did. I'd just like to understand his reasoning. Darling, Devin said, turning to Amara with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You look tired. Why don't you rest while Dr. Reed and I discuss your care? It was the way he said it, less suggestion, more command, that made Kingsley's jaw tighten. Actually, I prefer to discuss treatment with my patients present, he said firmly, though his voice remained quiet. The two men stared at each other, and Amara, watching from her bed, felt that chill again. Deeper this time. After Devin left, Kingsley sat in his office for a long time, staring at Amara's chart through blurred vision. The pieces were falling into place. The suspicious medications, Devin's behavior, the life insurance. But all Kingsley could think about was the way Amara had looked at him, the things she'd almost said, the electricity that had sparked between them when he touched her hand. The knowledge should have terrified him. Instead, it filled him with a fierce, protective rage. If Devin was doing what Kingsley suspected, if he was hurting Amara, manipulating her, slowly killing her for money, then Kingsley would stop him. Whatever it took, not because she was his patient, because she was his. In his heart, in his soul, in every way that mattered, Amara Williams was his, and he would move heaven and earth to keep her safe. Even if he could never tell her, even if she could never be his in reality, even if this love destroyed him. He picked up the phone and called Dr. Kate Anderson, a superior. They met in her office after hours. Kingsley laid out everything, the suspicious medications, Devin's behavior, the life insurance, his instincts screaming that something was deeply wrong. Dr. Kate Anderson listened, her expression growing darker. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Morrison, she finally said. I've suspected him for years. 3 patients have died under mysterious circumstances in the past 5 years. Each time the families were financially comfortable afterward, but I could never prove anything. He's too careful. Then we need to be more careful, Kingsley said, his voice tight with barely controlled emotion. Kate studied him, her eyes knowing. You're in love with her. It wasn't a question. Kingsley looked away, jaw clenched. That's not relevant. Kingsley, Kate said gently. I've known you for over a decade. I've never seen you like this. You look like you haven't slept in days. Your hands are shaking. This is more than professional concern. She's married, Kingsley said, his voice breaking slightly. She's my patient. It doesn't matter what I feel. It matters because it's clouding your judgment. You need to be careful. I am being careful, Kingsley interrupted. I've run every test. I've documented everything. I've followed protocol. My feelings for her don't change the fact that someone is trying to kill her, Kate. They just change how much I care about stopping it. Kate was quiet for a moment. What do you need from me? Help me save her, please. Over the next 3 days, Marcus worked with a toxicologist he trusted. The results confirmed his worst fears. Amara was being poisoned with thallium, a heavy metal that caused the exact symptoms she was experiencing. In therapeutic-looking doses, it was killing her slowly. There's an antidote, the toxicologist said. Prussian blue, but you'd need to administer it soon. Within days, the damage will be irreversible. Kingsley went to Dr. Anderson with the evidence, his hands shaking as he showed her the results. We need to involve the authorities, she said. There's no time. Kingsley's voice was desperate now, raw. By the time we get warrants, file reports, navigate the bureaucracy, she'll be dead. Or Devin will transfer her to another facility. Kate, I can't... His voice broke. I can't lose her. The truth of it hung in the air. He loved her. He was completely, desperately in love with her, and the thought of her dying was unbearable. I have to do this, he said quietly, even if it costs me everything, even if she never knows how I feel. Even if I go to prison, I have to save her. Dr. Anderson studied him for a long moment, seeing the depth of emotion in his eyes, the way his whole body was taut with fear and determination. Do what you need to do, she finally said. I'll document everything from my end. I'll protect you as much as I can. But Kingsley, be careful. I will, he said. Then softer. Thank you. That night, Kingsley obtained the Prussian blue and sat in his dark apartment, holding the vial like it was the most precious thing in the world. Because it was Amara's life. He thought about her smile, her laughter. He thought about all the things he'd never get to say to her, all the moments they'd never share. And he made his peace with the fact that this might be his last act of love for her. Silent, unacknowledged, but absolute. At 2 a.m., Kingsley approached room 347 with the syringe, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through his chest. He opened the door quietly. Amara was awake, staring at the ceiling, tears streaming silently down her face. When she heard the door, she turned, and her expression transformed when she saw him. Kingsley, she whispered, and just the sound of his name on her lips made his heart ache. What are you doing here so late? She looked so beautiful and so broken that Kingsley had to take a moment to breathe. He wanted to tell her everything, that he loved her, that he thought about her every waking moment, that she'd become the most important person in his world. Instead, he said, I need to give you something. He approached her bedside, and Amara's eyes widened when she saw the syringe. Kingsley, what? Amara, listen to me. He sat on the edge of her bed, closer than he'd ever allowed himself. I don't have time to explain everything, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She looked at him, really looked at him, and something in his eyes must have told her everything he couldn't say aloud. I trust you, she whispered. With my life, Kingsley, I trust you. The words nearly undid him. Kingsley reached out with his free hand and gently cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. It was the first time he'd touched her so intimately, and the contact sent shockwaves through both of them. I'm so sorry, he said softly. I'm sorry for what this is going to do to your life. I'm sorry for... Kingsley. Amara's hand came up to cover his on her cheek. Whatever it is, just do it. I trust you. Kingsley felt his eyes burning with unshed tears. He leaned forward, his forehead nearly touching hers, breathing in her scent one more time. You deserve so much better than this, he whispered. You deserve the world, Amara. Then he pulled back, trying to steady his shaking hands, and reached for her IV line. That's when the lights blazed on. Well, Devin's voice came from the doorway, phone held up, clearly recording. Dr. Reed administering unauthorized medication to my wife at 2 a.m. How very intimate. This should be interesting to explain to the medical board. And the police. Kingsley's blood ran cold, but he didn't move his hand from Amara's face. In fact, his fingers tightened slightly, a silent promise. Devin? Amara's voice was confused, frightened, but Kingsley could feel her leaning into his touch, could feel her choosing him, even without understanding why. I've been watching you, Doctor, Devin said, his mask of charm completely gone, replaced with cold calculation. The touching. He gestured at Kingsley's hand on Amara's cheek. Very unprofessional, I knew you'd try something eventually. I just had to wait for you to incriminate yourself, he smiled, a terrifying expression. My wife is going to die tonight, Dr. Reed, and you're going to take the fall for it. Murder by medical malpractice. And everyone will believe it because you're clearly obsessed with her. No, Kingsley said quietly, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. He looked directly into Devon's eyes. I won't let you hurt her anymore. And with his heart pounding and Amara's hand clutching his, Kingsley injected the Prussian blue into her IV line. Devon lunged forward with a roar of rage, but Kingsley stood, putting himself between Devon and Amara, his body a shield. Security! Devon was screaming. He's killing my wife! Someone stop him! The next minutes were chaos. Security rushing in. Devon screaming accusations, his phone waving with the damning video. Kingsley stood calmly, his eyes never leaving Amara's terrified face, silently trying to tell her, I've got you. I love you, everything will be all right. As security pulled him away, Kingsley called out, Kate! Kingsley! No! Please! The last thing Kingsley saw before they took him away was Amara's face, devastated and confused, and Devon's triumphant smile. Amara didn't die. In fact, within hours, she began to feel better for the first time in months. Her head cleared, the crushing fatigue lifted. It was like waking from a nightmare. Meanwhile, Kingsley sat in a holding cell, his career and freedom hanging in the balance. Devon was playing the grieving husband perfectly, telling anyone who would listen about the obsessed doctor who'd become fixated on his wife. But Dr. Kate Anderson was working behind the scenes. She provided police with Kingsley's research, the toxicology reports, the evidence of thallium poisoning. She requested a full investigation into Dr. Morrison's patient histories and financial records. And Amara, finally restored to health and understanding the truth, fought like hell. My husband tried to kill me, she told the detectives, her voice shaking but firm. Dr. Reed saved my life. Test my blood. You'll find the poison. Then you'll find where it came from. The investigation moved quickly once they knew what to look for. Devon's financial records showed payments to Dr. Morrison. Morrison's encrypted files contained treatment protocols designed to kill, not cure. The insurance policy Devon had pushed so hard for. The will he'd updated. The phone records showing he'd been in the hospital when he claimed to be home, waiting to catch Kingsley in the act. It took 3 days to compile enough evidence to arrest Devon and Morrison, 3 days during which Amara barely slept, barely ate, spending every waking moment fighting for Kingsley's freedom. She hired the best lawyers she could find. She gave interviews. She showed up at the police station every single day demanding updates. She was relentless, fierce, transformed by love and gratitude and fury into a force of nature. When they finally released Kingsley, Amara was waiting outside the police station. He emerged looking exhausted, his clothes rumpled, his hair disheveled, his eyes searching the crowd almost desperately. When he saw her, he stopped dead, his expression crumbling with relief and something deeper, something that made Amara's heart soar. Amara, he breathed. She was running before she consciously decided to move. She threw herself into his arms, and Kingsley caught her, holding her so tightly it almost hurt, his face buried in her hair, his whole body shaking. You're okay, he kept saying over and over like a prayer. You're okay. You're alive. Because of you, Amara said, pulling back just enough to look at his face. She cupped his cheeks in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. Kingsley, you saved my life. I would do it again, he said fiercely, 1,000 times. I would sacrifice everything for you, Amara. I know, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I know you would, because you love me. Kingsley's eyes widened, his breath catching. Amara, don't deny it, she said softly. I saw it in your face that night, the way you touched me, the way you stood between me and Devon without hesitating, the way you said I deserved the world. Her voice broke. You love me, Kingsley Reed. And I need to know, is it real, or am I imagining it? They were standing in the middle of the parking lot, people walking past them. But Kingsley didn't care anymore. He was done hiding, done being careful, done pretending. Let's go and talk about it somewhere else, she said softly. Okay, Marcus replied, clearly surprised. They stepped into the car. My place? She nodded, smiling with relief. His ordeal, what he endured because of her, was finally over. His apartment was exactly what she'd expected. Books everywhere, classical music playing softly. A perfect organized chaos that spoke of a brilliant mind. How are you feeling? He asked, his voice gentle. Better. Good, actually. The doctors say I'll make a full recovery. She paused. Thanks to you. Kingsley looked away, uncomfortable with the gratitude. I just did what any doctor would. No, Amara interrupted firmly. You did what no one else would. You risked everything. They stood in awkward silence for a moment, and Amara realized she'd never seen Kingsley quite so uncertain. He was usually calm, composed, if quiet, but now he seemed almost nervous. Kingsley, she said gently, can we sit down? I need to talk to you about this. They sat on his couch, Kingsley keeping a careful distance, hands clasped in his lap. I've been thinking a lot over the past 2 weeks, Amara began, about everything that happened. About trust and love, and how I missed all the signs with Devon. Kingsley started to speak, but she held up a hand. But I've also been thinking about you, about how you looked at me in that hospital room, the way you'd linger after checking my vitals, how you'd adjust your glasses whenever you were nervous around me, the way your voice would soften when you said my name. Kingsley's eyes widened slightly, and a flush crept up his neck. Amara, you're in love with me, she said simply. Aren't you? Kingsley looked like he wanted to disappear into the couch cushions. He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally sighed. Is it that obvious? He asked quietly. To me, yes. To everyone else? She smiled. They probably think you're just a dedicated doctor. But I see you, Kingsley. I see how you are with other patients, professional, kind, but distant. With me, you were different. You were present. I crossed so many lines, Kingsley said, his voice barely above a whisper. You were married? You were my patient? You shouldn't have fallen in love with me? Amara asked gently. Kingsley, you can't control who you love. You can only control what you do about it. And what you did was save my life. You never acted inappropriately. You just cared deeply. Kingsley was staring at his hands. What are you saying, Amara? She took a breath. I'm saying that I've spent 2 weeks trying to figure out what I feel, and I realized something. When I think about my future, about rebuilding my life, about all the things I want to do, you're there. In every version. Not because you saved me, but because of who you are. She reached out, gently taking his hand. He looked up and she saw vulnerability in his eyes that made her heart ache. I'm saying that I think I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, if you'll have me. A divorced woman with trust issues and a very dramatic past. Kingsley's eyes searched her face. Amara, you've been through trauma. You're vulnerable. I don't want you to confuse gratitude with... Don't, she said firmly. Don't tell me what I'm feeling. I know the difference between gratitude and love. I'm grateful to the nurses who took care of me. I'm grateful to Dr. Kate for believing in you. But what I feel for you is different. When I look at you, I feel safe. Not because you're my protector, but because you see me. Really see me. And you still think I'm worth something. When you smile, which isn't often enough, it's like the whole room gets brighter. I love how quiet you are, how thoughtful. I love that you're more comfortable with books than people. I love that you risked everything, not because you expected something in return, but because it was the right thing to do. Tears were sliding down her cheeks now. So yes, Kingsley Reed, you're in love with me. And I'm in love with you. And I need to know if you're brave enough to take a chance on us. For a long moment, Kingsley just looked at her. Then slowly, he reached up and gently wiped away her tears. I've spent my whole life being careful, he said softly, calculating risks, avoiding complications. And then you smiled at me in that hospital room, and every careful plan I'd made went out the window. I love you, Amara. I love your strength, your resilience, the way you still find reasons to smile even after everything you've been through. I love how you draw me out, make me talk, make me feel less alone in the world. But I'm terrified, he admitted. Terrified of hurting you. Terrified of this being too fast, too complicated. Terrified that one day you'll wake up and realize you deserve someone better. Amara cupped his face in her hands. I deserve someone who loves me. Someone who sees me as an equal, not a possession. Someone who makes me want to be braver, to dream bigger. That's you, Kingsley. So are you brave enough? She asked again. Kingsley smiled, truly smiled, in a way she'd rarely seen. For you? Yes. He kissed her then, gentle and tentative at first, then deeper as she pulled him closer. It was a kiss that tasted like hope and new beginnings, and the promise of something real. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Amara laughed, a sound of pure joy. So what now? Kingsley asked. Now we take it one day at a time, Amara said. We build something real, something honest, Something that's ours. I like that plan, Kingsley said softly. Good, Amara replied, snuggling into his side, because I'm not going anywhere. The next months were healing for both of them. Amara filed for divorce, started therapy, began rebuilding her life. Kingsley faced a medical board review but was ultimately vindicated with Dr. Anderson's testimony and the evidence proving he'd acted to save a life. They took things slowly, learning each other outside the intensity of crisis. Kingsley took her to quiet restaurants where they could talk for hours. Amara dragged him to art galleries and made him dance in his living room to terrible pop music. They cooked together, laughed together, held each other through nightmares and grief. And slowly, Amara learned what it felt like to be truly loved. Kingsley was patient with her fears, understanding when she needed space, steady when she needed reassurance. He never made her feel guilty for the time it took to heal, never rushed her, never demanded more than she could give. He loved her with a quiet intensity that took her breath away. He loved her in the way he listened when she talked about her business dreams, in the way he held her when she cried, in the way he looked at her like she hung the stars, and Amara loved him back with everything she had. She loved his brilliant mind and his shy smile. She loved the way he got lost in his research and the way he made terrible jokes that made her laugh anyway. She loved how safe she felt in his arms, how seen she felt in his presence. One evening, 8 months after the arrest, they were sitting on Kingsley's couch, classical music playing softly. Amara curled against his side reading while he worked on a research paper. It was perfectly ordinary. Perfectly peaceful, perfectly them. Amara looked up at him, watching the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the way he absently pushed his glasses up his nose, and felt her heart overflow with love. Kingsley? He looked down at her, his expression softening immediately, the way it always did when he looked at her. Marry me. Kingsley's eyes widened, his hand freezing midair. What? Amara sat up, turning to face him fully, taking his hands in hers. I know it's supposed to be the other way around. I know you're probably planning some sweet, thoughtful proposal, but I can't wait anymore. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So, marry me? For a moment, Kingsley just stared at her, his eyes shining with emotion. Then he laughed, a sound of pure joy and disbelief. I've had a ring for 2 months, he admitted, reaching into his desk drawer and pulling out a small velvet box. I've been trying to figure out the perfect way to ask you, how to make it special enough, romantic enough. This is perfect, Amara interrupted, tears streaming down her face. This is us. No grand gestures, just us being honest about what we want. Kingsley opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring that was so perfectly her it made her cry harder. Then yes, he said softly, smiling through his own tears. Yes, I'll marry you, Amara. 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and they kissed, soft and sweet and full of promise. I love you, Amara whispered against his lips. I love you too, Kingsley replied. Always. They married in a garden in spring, surrounded by 30 people who truly mattered. Amara wore a simple white dress with flowers in her hair. Kingsley wore a suit and a smile that never wavered, though his hands shook slightly as he held hers. When it came time for vows, Kingsley took a deep breath, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Amara, I've spent most of my life comfortable with silence. I'm not good with words, not good at expressing what I feel. But you've taught me that love deserves to be spoken out loud, even when it terrifies me. His hands tightened around hers. The night I stood outside your hospital room determined to save you, I knew I was probably destroying my life. My career, my freedom, everything I'd worked for, and I didn't care, because the thought of a world without you in it was unbearable. His voice broke slightly. I would make that choice again, 1,000 times, because you, Amara Williams, are worth everything. You're worth every risk, every sacrifice, every moment of fear. You came into my life when I least expected it, and you changed everything. You made me believe that love isn't just something that happens in books. You made me want to be braver, to take chances, to live instead of just exist. Tears were streaming down both their faces now. I promise to be your partner in all things. I promise to listen when you speak, to hold you when you cry, to celebrate your victories and stand beside you in your struggles. I promise to love you not just in the big moments, but in the quiet ones too. In the mornings when we're drinking coffee, in the evenings when we're reading together, in every ordinary Tuesday for the rest of our lives. I promise to never make you small to make myself big. I promise to honor your strength, to support your dreams, to remind you every single day how extraordinary you are." His voice grew softer, more intimate. "You survived the unsurvivable, my love. And now, I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you don't just survive, you thrive. You soar. You become everything you were always meant to be. I love you beyond words, beyond reason, beyond anything I thought possible. You are my home, my heart, my everything, and I am honored, so profoundly honored to be yours." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Then Amara spoke, her voice strong despite her tears. "Kingsley, a year and a half ago, I didn't know if I'd live to see this day. I was trapped in a nightmare, slowly dying, thinking I was losing my mind. But standing here now, I realize that surviving was just the beginning. Living, truly living, started when I met you. You didn't just save my life. You showed me what it means to be truly seen and loved. Not for who someone wants me to be, but for who I am. You showed me that love isn't about possession or control. It's about partnership and trust and choosing each other every single day." Her voice grew tender. "You love me in the quietest, most beautiful ways. In the way you make my coffee exactly how I like it. In the way you listen to me ramble about my business ideas for hours. In the way you hold me when the nightmares come. In the way you look at me like I'm the most important person in your world. I promise to love you with my whole heart. I promise to draw you out when you're too much in your head, and to give you silence when you need it. I promise to honor your beautiful, brilliant, introverted soul. I promise to build a life with you that honors both of us, your careful thoughtfulness and my impulsive dreams. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you for believing in us when it seemed impossible. Thank you for being brave enough to risk everything for love. For me." Her voice broke with emotion. "I love you, Kingsley Reed. Today, tomorrow, every day for the rest of my life. You are my hero, my partner, my home, and I promise to spend forever reminding you how extraordinary you are." When the officiant pronounced them married, Kingsley pulled Amara into a kiss that was tender and deep and full of all the love they'd been too scared to express in the beginning. It was a kiss that tasted like tears and joy and forever. Their first dance was to "At Last" by Etta James. Kingsley held her close, his face buried in her hair, swaying gently to the music. "Happy?" Amara whispered. "More than I ever dreamed possible," Kingsley replied, pulling back to look at her face. "Sometimes I still can't believe you're real, that this is real." "Believe it," Amara said, touching his cheek tenderly. "You're stuck with me forever now, Dr. Reed." "There's nowhere else I'd rather be," he said softly, and kissed her again. Later, as the sun set and fairy lights twinkled in the trees, they stood together watching their friends and family celebrate. Kingsley's arms wrapped around Amara from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Do you remember that day in the hospital?" Amara said quietly, "when you asked me what I wanted?" "I remember," Kingsley murmured. "I wanted to travel, to write a book, to build something of my own. To live, really live." She turned in his arms to face him. "But more than any of that, I wanted to feel this. This feeling right here, like I'm home, like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Kingsley's eyes shone with tears. "You are home, my love, with me, always." "Always," Amara agreed, and kissed her husband under the stars. Around them, Dr. Kate Anderson raised a glass in toast to the couple who'd defied every odd. Their friends laughed and danced and celebrated love that refused to die. And Kingsley, holding his wife, knew that he would never doubt miracles again. Because Amara was his miracle. This love was his miracle, and every day with her was a gift he would never take for granted.